IsoTech is developing a wearable device that helps older adults prevent dizziness and falls from orthostatic hypotension. After a successful proof of concept study, the team is moving toward design for manufacture and pilot build. Here's our conversation about their progress and experience at RESI Boston. Lochlainn, can you introduce us to IsoTech and tell us how your wearable therapeutic device addresses the challenge of orthostatic hypertension?
Okay, so IsoTech, we're a small startup of three co-founders. I came up with the idea during a sports medicine conference in about 2017, actually. The issue at the time that we came across was partial hypertension is whenever you go from a lying or sitting position to standing up, and your nervous system doesn't keep up with the change, and your blood pressure drops. So this is quite common in elderly. So that's the demographic that we're focusing on. So it's all to do with falls prevention in the elderly. However, this autonomic dysfunction is part of POTS in younger people, and younger people who maybe if they've trained hard recently, or they're dehydrated, or they've got a viral illness, or recent COVID, will experience postural hypertension. So anytime we stand up too quickly and you feel like you've got a bit of a light head, that's postural hypertension, that experience. The problem with that is, although it sounds fairly benign, feeling a bit lightheaded when you're young, when you're elderly, you can see significant drops and loss of consciousness, which can lead to falls, a fractured hip, a significant head injury. A lot of elderly people are on blood thinners for different reasons. Then it's also impacted by the fact that at that age, you're then put on blood pressure lowering tablets. So this will exacerbate the whole thing. And it also then makes it very difficult to treat. So the medical treatments, the sort of pharmaceutical therapeutics, they all cause supine hypertension. So that's the increase your blood pressure when you're sleeping. That's not a good thing, as you can imagine. A lot of the research has come out with this problem, and that the ideal solution is something that transiently increases blood pressure. Like, nobody's come up with a solution that works in real life. So in our opinion, this is very disruptive technology, and it's a very simple idea. The way it works is the medical device, it has a simple action in you engage muscles in a contraction called an isometric muscle contraction. So this type of muscle contraction increases vascular resistance, and there's a few other autonomic physiological things that happen, that occur, that make this type of muscle contraction let's say, notorious for causing a transient increase in blood pressure. Now, when I came across this, it was kind of a warning. It was, if you're testing athletes after an injury with this type of muscle contraction, because it's seen as sort of a safe type of contraction to test an injured muscle or tendon, just be aware that if you're testing big muscle groups, it causes a transient increase in blood pressure. So there's been research since that proves that there's no harm and there's no risk of that. So, but we kind of thought, well, we're kind of treating older people. We identified different forces using smaller and medium-sized muscle groups, that all this type of contraction did was prevent the drop in blood pressure. We've spent years kind of developing different ideas. I think our initial idea was making it as part of a walking frame. And then we thought, no, making it wearable would be much more accessible. And what we're really trying to achieve is something that is compliant. So a lot of current counter maneuvers that I can advise my patients to do, there's no compliance. Patients don't really engage in it. They don't believe in it. They don't buy into it. They don't do these counter maneuvers. They don't bolus 2 pints of water before they get up because they can't. They don't do these weird exercises of squeezing their knees together, or as they stand up. There's nothing really preventing these elderly people falling over. So we think we've found the solution to all these falls in elderly folk.
And your proof of concept clinical study showed strong usability and safety. What are the most encouraging findings from those results?
We got a key opinion leader, James Frith, to investigate this. And he's been brilliant. He's been really engaged in the whole process. We were sent his recent research because his big conclusion was that there's still no solution. Basically, the conclusion of is like he did a multi-center study into how people are trying to treat postural hypertension, and the big conclusion was we need something that's engaged as a counter maneuver, or is like a non-pharmaceutical. So it was great. So as soon as I called him, he was very excited about it. We sent him some of our prototypes because that's where we're at, and we just have 7 prototypes. First of all, deciding the protocol and how to use it and all the research protocols. He was very helpful in that sort of remit. And then he did 17 consecutive patients that were attending his clinic. So if he's like a specialist, you can imagine that these were the untreatables. They were classed as severe autonomic failure. So these are the patients that will need the pharmaceuticals, like I said, and the pharmaceuticals don't work in a lot of these guys. So we were really nervous about the outcome, but we were stunned at the fact that we achieved a 10 millimeters of mercury reduction in blood pressure drop. If you can understand that, in nearly 50%, 48% of the patients, which in this patient group is really exciting. The other parts of that were we've seen decreases in blood pressure drops of both the systolic and diastolic. There was no safety issues. The compliance was great. There was a few learnings from the proof of concept study. So it's wrapped around the wrist on the radial artery. So we lost sort of feedback on a few of the patients, as in we lost the beat-to-beat analysis. So we had to just change the protocol a wee bit, but there was great learning. So we're very excited that whenever we take this to sort of a wider demographic and the wider sort of patient population, that we'll have even higher rates of response.
What are your immediate priorities?
We've got a proof of concept study. It's just about to get published. We're getting good feedback about that. We are now trying to get the things on the shelves, basically. So we're trying to get investment. We've been chatting to a few companies that we met through the RESI conference, and basically we're trying to get money in to get our concept developed further and get it on the shelves.
And what does getting on the shelves look like? How do you envision it fitting into clinical practice, and what impact are you looking to have?
Clinical impact, the way I see it is, like just this week, I've had a patient with postural hypertension, and I've felt fairly frustrated at not really having any good avenues to advise them how to manage this. We've got falls clinics that are emailing us looking to know when the device is going to be available, because they're in the same boat as me. I've got all these patients that they don't know how to treat. So it's just that the healthcare professionals, advise our model is if they advise sort of 5 patients a year, that's a great number for us when you think of the hundreds of thousands of people in UK and Ireland alone, and the millions in the States. A few healthcare professionals advising patients to go and get this. That would be a good direct-to-consumer sort of approach with that sort of medical affairs crossover. We're hoping to do further research and get it in NICE guidance. We're applying for this route to get research done to get it on NICE guidance as well. NICE guidance is what we follow in the UK, and a lot of the wider Europe and wider world would use NICE guidance as well.
And where are you in terms of fundraising, and what kind of investors or strategic partners are you hoping to engage with, or did you engage with at RESI Boston? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
For us, we have been approaching local investors in Belfast and in Ireland. Unfortunately, it's been difficult, trying to get somebody who has experience in health tech. There's not many around here. So getting to Boston and getting to the RESI conference was brilliant. Actually talking to investors who or aware of the opportunity of health tech. So we're trying to get investors that kind of see the opportunity in this device and just have experience in the distribution models and that sort of thing. For us, we were maybe having a chat with one person a month on average, or one investor a month. But the RESI conference, it allowed us to engage with, I don't know, like we sent like 150 emails on the platform. We got about 20 responses. During the conference, we had like about 10 meetings. We've had about 10 since that have reached out through the platform for virtual meetings. So for me, it was like we got about 2 years of what we were normally doing at home done in 1 week. So it's a very effective sort of platform. And hats off to you guys for setting this up. For somebody like me, like in Ireland, and there isn't that opportunity to talk to investors that have experience in health tech. It was just an absolute, just like finding the rainbow.
Let me ask you about this. You all were the first place winner out of over 50 companies presenting and pitching in the Innovators Pitch Challenge at RESI Boston. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What was your experience like in the Innovators Pitch Challenge, and how did this format support your outreach to investors while you guys were there?
It was Iggy McGowan that did the presentation. It just shows like how strong our team was. Iggy was doing the presentation. Neil had all the answers for pharmaceutical consultancy, and then any sort of medical questions, like clinical orientated questions, I was able to pitch in with that. So it was great to have the whole team over. Iggy's background is more sort of the commercial side of things. He's been part of developing devices in the past. Let's say, are they adjudicators or judges? The questions that they had, they just felt more appropriate. You could tell that they were coming from experience. Questions that we've had from other investors just have led us on wild goose chases. We've amended our deck, and then the next person we talked to didn't like the new thing in our deck. They were saying we should have done this other thing which we had previously. So it was good to get questions and advice from people with actual experience during the pitch. I was blown away that we won. That I listened to a number of the other pitches, and some of the technology was fantastic. It was really inspiring for us, I guess. It was a really big confidence boost for us to win. It shows that like we haven't invested 7 years of our life in nothing. So it's been monumental for us as a team. It was a great experience chatting to Dennis Ford. I've read his book since. I went to his talk during the conference. He just had some really good advice on how to decide where you're at as a company, how to approach, just so many little golden nuggets that have just been a complete game changer for me and how I'm thinking about the whole process.
That's fantastic. I have one last question for you, but I wanted to say, I thought it was interesting how you guys, you did send three of your colleagues, so yourself, Iggy, and Neil. And so I think that's a really great approach to a RESI conference. You guys also wore coordinating shirts that I thought stuck out well at the conference, and even like the whiskey thing. So those were all great tactics that made you stand out, which is the point ultimately. But my last question for you is, what advice would you give other device companies considering pitching at RESI?
I was going over there pretty nervous. I think as Irishmen, we're taught to be like humble. It's part of our sort of culture here to be very humble and things like that. So I was going out feeling very humble and feeling like the underdog, and I was worried that we were gonna, just be kind of laughed at and sent back home. What I found was quite surprising was like everybody we spoke to was so friendly and so welcoming. And like when I went up to investors, and Dennis was just like, just put out your hand and just say, hi, my name is Lochlainn. What sort of investor are you? I was greeted with this shake every time. And even if it was a rebuttal, like, oh, sorry, we're into therapeutics, but let me hear your pitch. Maybe I can help you. Maybe I can, everybody just wanted to help. It was just that sort of atmosphere, that sort of culture where everybody was just trying to help everybody. It was just an amazing experience. I thought we wouldn't succeed because we're not cocky and because we're not aggressive salesmen. We're kind of these kind of shy, humble Irishmen that are just up for a bit of crack. And we just had a lot of fun, and it was great.
Well, thank you for meeting with me today and answering these questions. And I wish you and IsoTech the best of luck. And please keep in touch with us and let us know what's next.
Yeah, well, see you in London and JP.
Oh, great. Wonderful.